Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Amit Thacker, and I'm a second-year MBA student at the Tepper School, for those of you who don't know me. It's an absolute honor for me to introduce the speaker today. Last summer, I was a member of one of Xerox's business unit in Pittsburgh, and also the president of the part-time Graduate Business Association at the Tepper School. At that time, I was thinking about ways to creating impact. What better way than to invite Ms. Burns to come and speak to us about leadership and transformation. So thank you, Ursula, for coming and making my wish come true.
I made him famous. See?
Ms. Burns is a leading authority on leadership and business transformation. And during her tenure, she's helped Xerox transform to the world's most diversified business services company. I'd like to share an insightful quote from Ms. Burns on this subject. The world is changing. We all know this. And as that world changes, if you don't transform your company, you're stuck. These words resonate with me as much as her story of leadership and transformation at Xerox. Ms. Burns joined Xerox as an intern in 1980 and held leadership posts in corporate services, manufacturing, and product development before assuming the role of president in 2007, CEO in 2009, and then chairman the year after. Under her leadership, Xerox completed its largest acquisition of ACS, and today is the leader in diversified business services, with services bringing in more than 50% of total revenue. Ms. Burns regularly appears on Fortune's and Forbes' Most Powerful Women and is a board director of American Express, Exxon, and Ford Foundation. Most notably, in 2009, U.S. President appointed Ms. Burns to help lead the White House National STEM program. With that, please join me in welcoming Ms. Burns and Dean Weingart today. Dean Weingart will be moderating the session and will take any questions that you may have for Ms. Burns.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit. Oh, I've got a mic. Well, welcome, Ms. Burns. We're thrilled to have you here.
Ursula, please.
Yeah, Ursula. All right, got it. So I figure I'll start where Amit left off and focused on this whole idea of transformation. You know, you really did change the face of Xerox from a kind of this manufacturing business, document managing company over into a diversified service business process provider. So I'm really interested to start with thinking about this highly successful transformation and also the ongoing, and the corporate culture that surrounds it and what you needed to do to make that happen.
Yeah, there are two parts of transformation. One is the what we do, and the other one is the how we do it. And the what we do has changed, not by stopping something, but by adding something. So we still are the leading provider of document technology products in the world. We have #1 share. We do everything from small to big. We have the best color machines, printing machines, multifunction devices, so we still do that. We also manage document infrastructures for clients here, all around the world, universities, public sector, everything. So we still do that. And we had to add some other customer value to our portfolio. And I'm going to do a little bit of a long story. When I became president, the CEO at the time, her name was Ann Mulcahy, who was phenomenal, said, here's your job for, she didn't say it would be 2 years that I'd be president, because I would have flipped out if I knew it was going to take that long, but here's your job for while you're president. She said, things are happening in the world. We knew this. Printed pages are not declining, interestingly enough, but they're less valuable to people every day, right? So you make a copy of something, or you print something, and you bundle it up, throw it away, and if you want another one, you just print another one. Nobody thinks about carrying this stuff around with them. So the value of the page is changing. Our technology and how people are needing to secure their data, their information, et cetera, is all on the rise and changing. So can you spend a little time thinking about what Xerox is going to be in the next couple of years? I said, we have a strategy department that does that. And she said, yeah, they do, but they don't know, they don't know a thing about the practical side of it. It's just like the consultants who come in and tell you stuff. And so she said, that was a smash. I don't mean that. We have consultants as well. So I had a team of people with me, a guy named Clive Barons, who was just an old manufacturing guy who I knew from a while ago, and another woman, her name was Sophie Vanderbroek, who ran our technology department. We would spend all this time thinking about, so what is Xerox going to look like in the future? And what we had to do was look at what our assets were. So what do we have? We have people in 160 countries around the world. Interesting, they work for us. And they all kind of know the Xerox way. We have a set of innovation engines that bail us out every time we're in trouble. They create futures for us. If we get into a big issue, they kind of run to the forefront, PARC, our Grenoble labs, all of these. And the third thing is that we know about how people move information in business, primarily information that was embedded in the old way in paper. So we know about business process from that core. Our company started with the transformation of one business process, which is the copying reproduction process, that was totally manual, right? So people would type it again if you wanted to get a second copy, put that mimeograph paper in if you wanted to get a second copy. There was no other way to do it. And we had a guy who was an engineer, who was actually a patent attorney, who applied technology to that business process and transformed it and created an industry. So interestingly enough, after 7 months, we come back to, what we do is we take business process, apply technology to it, and business model technology as well. It's not just the R&D. We had to figure out a way to sell this thing. We had to figure out a way to price it. There was no business mechanism to deliver the technical value to the client. We had to figure out a rental plan. Nobody rented things at that time. So we had a business process transformation and innovation in the way that we did the business and in what we did. So we stepped back and said, that's what we do. And what happened is that we got so good at that one business process transformation, we stopped thinking about any of the others. We said, that's it. What we're going to do is a copying company. We're going to make them faster. We're going to make them color. We're going to make them bigger, et cetera, et cetera. But at the core, we took a business process that every company has to have at the foundation, and we've tried to transform it using technology. So that's what we did. We said, that's what our business really is. It's not being a copy company. So what other business processes are pervasive around industries? And we went out buying these small companies that did business processes that were pervasive. So if you're a lawyer, you have to do discovery. If you're a lawyer or need a lawyer, or in any kind of litigation, you have to do discovery. And discovery is a manual process where they use these clerks to literally look through papers, look through them, redact things out of the paper. It's really amazing. And these guys get paid a lot of money every hour to do that. We found a small company that had developed a set of technologies to do this, and we bought them. Same thing with mortgages. So this is a business process that's everywhere. Bought these companies with the idea that we're going to actually apply our technology and scale them up and move them around the world. Skip to the end. We did this for 2 companies at $10 or $15 million a piece. We realized it's going to take us forever to buy up all of these companies and do this thing. So we tried to find one big company that had a diversified set of these core business processes, and it was this company called ACS. So what we did was we added a set of business process capabilities that needed transformation into our company, and we flooded them with R&D and with people and with process, et cetera. So that's the what. The thing that happened in transformation, the second problem, is that you bring in a whole bunch of people into your family that you don't know. They speak a different language. They live in different parts of the country. Really interesting. We're an edge company. California, so the blue states around the edge, I think, is where we are. These guys were from Utah. We don't know anybody in Utah. They were in Texas. So the culture of the company was totally different, these 2 companies. The second transformation was to try to figure out what kind of company we wanted to be. Did we want to be a blend of these 2 companies? Did we want to have one, what I call it the soul of the company, impose themselves on the other, et cetera, et cetera? Where we ended up was we wanted to have one part of the company impose itself on the other. We thought about blending, but we liked ourselves enough from the soul perspective to not deviate too much from that. It's hard. Because you lose the people, you lose their souls first, and then they walk out the door. And that between losing their souls and walking out the door is a lot of waste, right? I mean, and probably destruction as well. So we had to do a lot of purging, not of people, but it turned out to be of people, but we didn't like have a test that said you passed and you failed, you're in, you're out. But we had to actually do a lot of reinforcement of the way that we do business. We do business as a team. We have this statement in our company that if you want to go long, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go long, you go with others. And we are a long company, so you have to bring people with you. And it wasn't perfectly the culture of the other companies, so we had to kind of, particularly at the leadership level, kind of identify and purge people out. We are a company based on diversity. It's a big deal for us. We are not great at it. We're better than most American companies. And some people just don't agree. They don't agree, they think it's BS, and they think, it's going to pass, this too will pass. So even though we're not great at it, you actually have to at least pretend that you like it. So there's a whole bunch of things. We are really customer-based. We try not to dump them ever. Even if it's tough for us and we screwed it up or they screwed it up, we stick with them. This kind of thing. And so the culture of the other company wasn't always at that level, and so we had to kind of do some sorting there. So transformation is about what you do. That's the easy, generally. But how you do it is the hard part.
And did that come top down as well as bottom up? Or you mentioned...
Yeah, so the good news is it comes first and foremost top down. There were a lot of things, I was saying this in the smaller group earlier. I used to have a lot of trouble saying I want. When you become, I grew up in a kind of a small place, Manhattan, but small community. But we lived in the projects. All I knew was the projects, and we deferred a lot to people because you didn't have strength or power, and you just didn't have position to ask. So you didn't really spend a lot of time demanding things. Very rarely did you demand things or even ask for a lot. You hoped that people would see who you were. So I was not trained with this, I want this. In our house, we would talk about the things that we wanted, but we never walked out and said, By the way, very different culture today around the world. People are very high on the I want stuff. But it took me a while as a CEO to realize that people wanted me to say what I wanted. So they would say something, I'd say, well, what do you think? And they would, some of them would just pause and like, what do you mean, what do I think? They want to know, what do you want? So it took me a while to start saying this. And so when we first bought ACS, which was literally, I walked in the company, I become CEO and we buy this thing, like the next day. We actually closed the deal, a little bit after we came in. It was obviously being worked way before that. And it took me a while to be comfortable with, guys, this is what I want. We're a team-based company. If you're not going to be there, don't come. Don't come. And by the way, we have great ways to transition you out. We have all these outplacement services. We will retrain you. We'll give you a severance package. But we wanted particularly the leaders to vote and to affirm their approach. And if their approach matched, good. If their approach didn't match, I didn't damn them, but they couldn't stay. So these are...
So the leadership style you're talking about seems very collaborative with the person at the top being clear about the direction and the vision. Would that summarize your leadership style? How do you summarize your leadership style? How do you think about that? And how have your life experiences influenced your leadership style?
So I love this because I was prepped with the same questions in the easy one, so I can actually say it again. So somebody asked exactly that question. What was my leadership? What was the word that they used? Brand. What was my leadership brand? And I said, really interesting to all of you out there, when I was growing up, we didn't have things called leadership brands. We never thought about leadership brands when you're coming through a company, ever. I mean, now of course you think about everything, right? When you're in business school, I had to find out what my leadership style was over time. I had to develop it over time, and then affirm that I kind of was doing something. That there was a continuous pattern. That even though I didn't say it, that it was the truth. One of the things that's for me really important is that people know where I am. They know, and one of my predecessors always said, you should never let the people see you sweat. And I have exactly the opposite approach. Exactly the opposite. My team sees me sweat. When I am nervous, when I am uncertain, when I am crazed, they know it. By the way, when I am happy, certain, They know it. By the way, my approach is that I have to know all of their. We have to know each other's because we as a team make up the whole. We as a team make up the whole, and me alone would leave a ton of uncovered spots, blind spots, a ton of them. So I have a whole bunch of people who, when we put them together, I hope that they add up to a whole human, and maybe a whole human plus with some double covered in areas. So my style is to be fairly authentic. I don't do well, not answering questions. People ask me a question, and I answer the question, and they say, well, you should hedge that a little bit. I'm not too good, so authentic. Really practical. So I made the comment about consultants. And by the way, we have consultants. They are generally very good. I have a strategy good team that they're good. But the thing that's interesting about those people is about that profession is that it misses the injection of people into the solution. If we could do everything by program or by machine, it would work perfectly. But we bring people. I go, and today I'm distracted because my daughter is sick, right? The factory worker is X because that's what messes it up. Yeah. And messes it up. That's what makes it all possible, right? So I'm really practical in making sure that people understand that my team understands that we have a whole bunch of people, 140,000 of them, that at some level have to kind of get what we're asking them to do. And so it's a really big thing about being practical, and trying to get at least the most of them kind of headed in the right direction. You're not going to get all 140,000, but you can't have 70,000 of them heading south and 70,000 heading north, right? Particularly if you want to go north. So there's a whole bunch, that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, I said this earlier, is that I am really a missionary leader. And I've just become very familiar with this in business because I've been trying to figure out kind of what's happening in business. Mm-hmm. When I joined the company, we stayed in the company. We didn't stay in the company because we didn't have options. I mean, we had options. I have options to go every day. From the time that I was head of manufacturing, every single day I get a job offer to go do something, and almost always is to do something in some great, exciting place, and that you can live somewhere else, and you can get a little bit more money, and et cetera, et cetera. Not every single day, but. And early I realized that I was more likely to stay where I was because I felt that I owed something to the place than I was to leave. And so this idea that I've come this far, this is before a CEO, and all of that far was gotten in partnership with a company that gave me opportunities, that showed me the world, that paid me great money, that whatever the heck it was. Mm-hmm. And I have to decide on the go forward, particularly when things are bad, whether I'm going to dump them at that time, right, and go to the next shiny thing. So this idea of missionary, I've invested now in this company way before I became CEO. Obviously, I've been here 35 years, so it happened a long time ago. So I'm a missionary leader. This is the long run. This is the team goes long, the individual goes short. And
you expect your people to have similar types of...
Yeah, I think that I'm coming to the conclusion of coming. This is like 5 years in the making, so I'm not a really fast decision maker on these kinds of things, but we need both missionaries and mercenaries at work. Mm-hmm. We need both. So we have some people on my team who are they come in, they do their job, they lose focus, and they go to another place. So we need, some of that is okay. Some of that in the leadership team is okay. Mm-hmm. So if you have 10 people, maybe one. But if we have a leadership team of half the people are there for a short term, it's really not really good. So I'm a person who actually engages, even in organizations that I spend time with. I've been on American Express's board 14 years. Mm-hmm. I keep saying, maybe it's time to go. He's like, no, it's not time to go. This is exactly the time to stay. Yeah. It's kind of like I get invested in places, and that's how. So I'm a missionary type person. So practical, definitely going for the long, very, very kind of authentic, mm-hmm. including all of the bad things, mm-hmm. and dedicated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You talked a little bit about your background in terms of coming out of the projects, and I've read a lot about your experiences moving up. And you talked about in Xerox itself how you've been given opportunities. Are there specific opportunities you had along the way, or really critical points in your life that you think brought you to where you are?
Yeah. One was going to engineering school. One was choosing to be an engineer, mm-hmm. and it was kind of a haphazard choice. I didn't even know what engineers were. I literally never heard of one. when I was going to high school. I literally did not. I went to an all-girl Catholic school in the city, and I went to a Catholic school in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. They taught you English, religion, so English including writing and structuring a sentence, so I'm a pretty good writer. Religion and mathematics. Arithmetic it was called then. And then we had that was half our day. The other half of our day was Jesus, belief in Jesus, good spiritual education. So when I was growing up, there were a couple of options, and this was really true. You could be a nurse, you could be a nun, or you could be a teacher. Nun was out. It was out really early. There's some side benefits of nun, and there's some side benefits of not doing that, right? So it was teacher or nurse. That's what, I went to school in the 60s and 70s. And neither of those things were too appealing, even though teacher was appealing, a little bit appealing. So anyway, I found out early that I was good at math. And at least better at math than most people in my class. I found out I was really deficient when I went to college, by the way, but the good news is to actually believe you're good at something, and then you kind of fall in love with it, and then you get better at it later. So I actually went to high school, all-girl Catholic high school in the middle of Manhattan, and I had one guidance counselor, and she told me to go. I said, I got to make enough money when I get out of college to support my mother. That was a big thing, to make sure that my mother has a better life, because she was amazing, just an amazing woman, and sacrificed everything for her kids. And so I wanted to at least have a little bit of money so we can move out of the projects, or at least live better in the projects, or whatever the heck it was. And she said, go to the library and look at the Barron's book, so you can kind of figure out what careers are like. This was before they had a computer, literally. I got a TI calculator that did the 4 functions. That was the computer that we had. But so you had to go to the library, and you couldn't take it out. So you had to sit there day after day after day. You couldn't even take the book out. It was a reference book. And interestingly enough, the #1 career, because my thing was 4 years of college. 4 years of college, we had no option. My mother said, 4 years of college, you go, how do you pay? Don't worry about it, we'll figure that out. So 4 years of college. #1 career after 4 years of college. Makes the most money, chemical engineering. I said, that's it? All right. I am serious. That is how I decided to go to school. I said, that's it. I'm going to be a chemical engineer. So I go back to school, and I realized that you should take a little bit of chemistry. So I'm a senior. I took chemistry. Didn't particularly like it very much, but I figured I could get over that. And I applied to all of these colleges as a senior, and I got accepted to a lot of them under these programs that are for deficient students. It's called a Higher Education Opportunity Program. So you have some bright spots, but you were not totally prepared. And I picked the school that I can get to on a train from my house, which was Brooklyn Poly, 3 stops on the train. I was toying with Yale because they had a really good program, but they wanted me to learn how to swim. At that time, you had to swim the length of the pool and back, and I thought that was totally impractical. What does that have to do with anything, right? So, I still can't, to this day, swim. So I went to Brooklyn Poly under this program called HEOP, and I hated chemical engineering. I hated chemistry, and I was going to leave. And my guidance counselor said, this trip, you're really good at, I was really great at physics. Become a mechanical engineer, so I became a mechanical engineer. So first thing was being a mechanical engineer. The reason why that was important, besides the backstory, was that it was different. So every room I walked into, I was noticed. Every room. Well, I would go, they would come to recruit, and everybody would come talk to me. I was no better a student than anybody else, but I was the only person in the room who looked like me, and it was an oddity, so it was pretty cool. So I picked this career at the time that people were like, how the hell did this, who is this? This is like a pink elephant in the room. So I got, it was really valuable. Xerox hired me, and I was noticed at Xerox first because I was different. And it was we want more of these kinds of people in here, so maybe we should pay attention to her a little bit and see what we can do. And then a little bit later was that because I was good. So the first thing was second thing was going to Xerox. I lucked out in a company that allowed me, I say this all the time to my team, to bring my whole self to work. I mean, I came to work Lower East Side, Manhattan, Brooklyn Poly, Columbia, grad school, walked into Xerox, and that's speaking the way I spoke, and they were like, okay, what can you do? It was more go to this lab. I had a lab assistant. It was really cool. They didn't spend a lot of time trying to get me to dress a certain way or to cut my hair or to speak a certain way or listen to certain music or to fit some look and feel. I did make changes, by the way, because you make those changes because you are so odd that they distract sometimes, right? But that's a different set of personal choices. So the second thing was going to Xerox, second great choice. The third great choice was having kids. Well, getting married, and then it was getting married and having kids. It is the completion portion, for me at least. It was personal completion portion. I needed this affirmation, which I didn't know, that I could love something as just kind of clearly as that. Because before, it's kind of like you just do things. You kind of go and go and go and go, collect, move up. And then there's this thing that happens to you, and you go, oh my goodness, it has nothing to do with any of that. That was the third thing. And then that's the third thing, yeah. And then the fourth thing was staying at Xerox when I had the choices to leave. I had two really big opportunities to leave that were really close. And I chose not to leave, and they were good things.
The being different and standing out, certainly you're a triple minority amongst your other CEOs, being a black woman who's an engineer running a multi-billion-dollar organization. And so you've talked a little bit, I say, about making that transformation and figuring that out. But do you feel like that is, or how has that influenced?
This is a question that I get a lot, and I usually give a smart-ass answer to the question. And the reason why, I'm sorry, is that word allowed in here?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And used quite often, actually.
That is. Because the question is asked think about the perspective. Somebody says to you, how does it feel being a woman leader? You go, wow, all I have ever been in my life is a woman. All I've ever been is black. So it's kind of hard so what I always do to answer this and not have the smart aleck thing is to turn it around and say what should happen, and so I'm going to answer it from this perspective, is that you ask the team of people who I work with and who I've worked with over my time and ask them, what does it feel like having a black woman leader? Because as your boss, because I've always been me. Yeah. They've never worked for me. So what I find out from them is gender. The gender differences are real. They are real. They are, and I like them. Not only the physical, the approach kind of differences. I think that these things are getting washed away over time as we make progress in the world and society, but there are distinctions about how we approach problems, distinctions about how we feel and think about people. There are distinctions about where we place value in value. That's good. I think that those things are good. By the way, they are not only gender, they are cultural, depends upon what part of the world. Those things are all good. I think that we should bring as much difference to the table as possible. Those differences are things that we value and that I value and I like, and I think that they are to be emphasized. Everything else, if you ask my team, they would say, seems pretty normal. Seems like the guy before, probably going to be like the guy after. Really, I mean, I go to work every day. More of a problem, more of a difference is where the fact that I came from New York City, and I went to a regular school. And I didn't go to whatever the prep schools are, and I'm an engineer. Those differences are real. How I approach a problem, how I speak, the pace at which I speak, the vernacular that I use is definitely different than the guys who come from Texas or that stuff. But that's not really racial, and it generally isn't gender. It's more about region. And then the other thing is how I approach a problem. This is probably why I became an engineer. I like answers like 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So when I took, one of the things I loved about engineering school was that I took a lot of courses like that. But then I would have to take like English classes where they asked me to write a paper. And the guy would send it back and say, it's not good. And I said, well, I thought it was good. And I didn't write any structural sentences wrong. He just didn't like it. I don't like those kinds of things. You know, I like, it's less clear to me about success. By the way, obviously, a lot of the world is that, so you have to kind of learn it. But obviously, my bent is towards clarity. It's towards analytics. And that's, so if you ask them, they would say that's Ursula is for sure. Yeah. So show me, we're going to buy this company, really? Well, show me the facts, the data about it. Let's think about the process we're going to use to integrate them. There has to be a plan, these kinds of things, and the way I speak. But the gender part, they don't really see that, except for the natural gender parts. You know, they don't really spend a lot of time on it. I'm pretty ordinary.
Excellent. I do want to leave time for questions, so we've got about 5 more minutes for this portion. And I could go one of 2 ways. So I want to do a little bit of advice giving, give you the opportunity. We've got a group here of young professionals who aspire for leadership positions, both men and women from all over the world. What type of advice would you give to our students? And I'll move out so everyone can see.
I'm going to change that one. I'm speaking to the business school, so I got to remember. That's it. Those are the 3 things. Work hard. This is a jump, I love this. I love it. Whenever I talk to young people, it is so amazing to me. You know, we have all this technology now that even you don't even have to kind of know the map. You don't have to know where you're going. You don't have to think about anything. You just kind of get there. You don't have to remember anything. It always reminds you. You don't have to know anything. You know, and we're training ourselves to kind of live outside of ourselves. I think this work hard. By the way, technology should allow you to do significantly more valuable things. Not look down in the thing and walk. That's not what it's about. It's not about reading the email. It's about allowing you to do more valuable things. So technology loosens you up so you can work hard. And work hard is really boring. It's really boring. So I have a team, Xerox team. Raise your hands. Every single day, if you're a salesperson at Xerox, guess what you do? Go out and call on customers. Every single day. And by the way, and do it really well. Lots of them. You can't email them. It's not about emailing the customer. It's not about, doing a video chat with the customer. You can do that sometimes. Work hard. Kind of get yourself engaged in it. The only way you can work hard is to do this thing. Have joy. People say you should be passionate about what you do. I just say you should just like it. And if you don't like it, particularly you guys, I mean, look at this. You're in Carnegie Mellon University. You're getting an amazing education. Find a place that you love, and something that you love to do. And if you don't love to do it, stop doing it. Really, I'm amazed. I go to workplaces, and they hate their jobs. They hate their jobs. They either like the thing that they're doing and hate the place, or they hate the thing that they're doing and like the place, or both. And I say that the world's relatively big, and life is too short to end up in a place where you have either of the 2 bads happening. So you got to have joy. And in order to have joy, you got to kind of deliver it. And generally not at work, but of course at work, right? There's a whole bunch of other things. And then the one that I end up always on, because all of you guys probably have a little bit of debt. Debt? Or a little bit of luck. So I do understand that this is going to sound hollow. to somebody who's walking out of school, who doesn't have a job, and who has $80,000 worth of debt. So I understand that this is going to be a problem in the short term. I was going to write something else there, but I changed it. Money, I am amazed at this. I spend a lot of time, I have a lot of good friends, CEOs, accomplished, all of the accomplished people, all of them. I know them all, whatever the hell. It's interesting that the last thing that you talk about, or you never talk about it, is money. And I don't mean that it is always their health, their family's health. It's these kind of really basic things about, and whether their kids are settled. There's all of this stuff about the basic things that literally money often disrupts. Right? Kind of takes your focus off these important things. So I say that money is not everything. You got to pay down the alternative of that is poverty sucks. So we don't want poverty, obviously, and we want to try to not have it personally and have your extended as far as you can life not have it either. But there is a point where one more dollar doesn't make a difference, and it happens early. Happens a lot earlier than you think. So money's not everything. Work hard, have joy, and make sure you don't focus on money as the answer.
Right. Well, thank you. I want to open up the floor now to questions, and I think we have microphones around on the sides. If you raise your hand, Gwen can pass one over. Raise your hand high if you have a question. Here, this one up in front, we probably don't need a mic. Why don't you go ahead and stand up right here while we're waiting for someone.
I'll repeat it too, so just say it.
Okay, hi, my name's Allison. So I'm one of 5 moms in the full-time MBA program.
Interesting.
So I don't ask how you do it, because you're clearly doing it. But I want to ask what tools you had in your toolbox as a mom to make those things.
Yeah, by the way, this was another question that came up from a different perspective in the earlier room. And in the earlier room, we had 2 dads, which was interesting, and no moms. That's only because we didn't have any, but they were moms. They told me that you were around, which is good. So, every situation is different. And so my situation is going to be very different than you. I had my children, I got married when I was 30. And I had my son and daughter started having them when I was 32. And the benefit of that, and one other fact, was that my husband is 20 years older than I am. So, and he was a Xerox employee, a research scientist, research fellow. So I had this perfect thing laid out. I had a man who had already gone through I want to drive a fast car, all this crazy stuff. None of that interest. I'm the second marriage. He has some older kids. He was pretty settled. His career choice and the way he made a mark was really flexible. He was a researcher. He's what we call a principal engineer in a company, very high level, which is very good. And the timing, I started having kids when I was 30, and got married when I was 30. Started having kids when I was 32, and so from the time I started work until the time I was 32, it was heads down and run. By the way, I wasn't not trying earlier. It just didn't work out. You know what I mean? So for me, it became easy. That portion was easy. I was fairly senior in the company. I was running manufacturing. I was starting to run manufacturing, or a small portion of manufacturing. So I had a little bit more control over how things worked out. The big problems happened when my kids were 6 and 10. Right? When they were 6 and 10, my husband and I had to decide what the hell we were going to do with these kids, right? Because based on the way I was running around and traveling, and based on the fact that he was working all the time, basically we would never see these kids. They would go to school. We had somebody take care of them in the day. We had to have somebody in the beginning because we always had to leave earlier. Someone at the end because we always messed up and didn't get home on time. So basically we ended up kind of outsourcing our children, or getting to the point where we could possibly outsource our children. And my husband and I sat down. This was a time I was also I got sick at this time as well. And we had this conversation about, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he said he had been working at the company by that time for 42 years. And he had a long way to go. I mean, my husband had a long way. He could have worked for 10 more years easily, 15 more years easily. And he said, I said, one of us is going to have to actually make a choice here. And I said, I thought the best choice is that I continue working and you stay at home. And he agreed, by the way, it was not for. So we actually talked about it. We talked about the fact that we were slipping into this, creeping of the day, another hour, getting home at 7, getting home at 8, and we realized that's not what we wanted for our kids. We wanted to make sure that we actually had something to do with how they ended up. And we chose that way, and it was good. And I have a company, and I was in a job that allowed, that we never checked, we didn't have a time clock. It was whatever. You got there when you had to get there, and you left when you left, and we were in that kind of position. There are certain jobs that don't work that way, right? But this one did. So it kind of all fit together for me. But the part of that I want everybody in this room to take away is that you have to talk about it. It has to be a joint conversation. If you have somebody to talk to, by the way, if not, you're going to have to find a village to help you with this, right? Because really, my mother had nobody to talk. It was just her. And she had 3 kids. What's she going to do? But if you have a partner, then you should actually have a conversation about how you want to live your life and have something to do, and lay a plan out. And I don't mean one of these 20-year plans. I just mean like for the next year. Can we have a plan for the next year? That's it.
Hi, Ursula. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Ohima, second year. And my question is, how do you approach organizational change? For example, if there's an initiative that you are particularly passionate about, how do you roll it out and make sure that resistors, are well managed and that it does carry through the entire organization?
Yeah, so this is it's, by the way, at the level that I'm at, it's a little bit easier. That didn't quite come out the way I wanted it to come out, but it is a little bit easier. And the reason why I say it is that most things that the CEOs are done through others. If you think about, my daughter came to work with me before I was CEO, I was president. She said to me, because she kept asking me, what do I do? What do you do? And I would say, I go to meetings. Literally, go to meetings, either go to a meeting like this, go to a meeting in work. Basically, I go to meetings or read stuff. And she thought that was a kind of interesting job because she was very curious about why, so what do you do? Because that's what I do. I go to meetings and I don't do a lot of analysis independently, but some. I damn sure don't build anything anymore. I don't. So the reason why I bring that is that around the table leading Xerox, there are 9 people, me plus 8 others. How change is implemented in our company is through these people. I influence them, they influence, they then influence, and they influence. So that's one. One is I very rarely do anything. I'm really into design. Organizational design is a big thing for me. And great thing about my team is if it was left up to me, I'd tinker every day. I'd change this guy to go this, we can do this a little bit better. That's not good, by the way. It just drives people crazy and they can't settle in. So one is that my team, I spend a lot of time with the leadership team, my guys. I call them my guys. They're 6 women and 4 men, so I don't know if they're my guys, they're generic. Making sure that we're aligned and that we have a shared vision. Very rarely is it me telling them, so we get a core. When we were trying to transform and integrate ACS tightly, we actually had a working team. We sat around, we had dinners, and we had people from outside even help us kind of think about how we want to do those kinds of design, and then it's through the team. And most of the change that happens in the company, good, bad, or indifferent, is through people. Right? It's through people. So first. Second is communication. Second thing I do is I talk a lot. Somebody told me this before and I never thought I thought it was BS, but it is actually true. It's one of the most important jobs. It's this chief storyteller of the company. It's called reality and hope, right? So one of the things all people in the company has to understand is what the reality is today, good, bad, and indifferent, and then you got to paint some picture that keeps them engaged in the game, right? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not so easy. So making sure people are clear about reality and then giving people hope is the second thing that I do. If you can do those 2 stories, really good people, your team, their team, experts in research, can figure out the foundation underneath. Those 2 things are needed. Thank you. Stand up, and then sorry, can I do him and then him? Him and then you? The hat, yeah, the hat guy.
Max Gotcha. some economists at Harvard have argued that if companies allowed more flexible work hours for its employees, then it could reduce the rate of women dropping out of the workforce and thus accumulate more equal wages over time. In your experience, do you think more flexible work hours would be a net benefit for your company and also companies like yourself, or do you see any barriers to that?
Yeah, I don't really, I said this earlier, somebody in the previous room, I'm just going to throw this out, said that McKinsey had done a study about diversity. I said, McKinsey's a real good company because they got paid for something that we already knew, right? So, I think this is something that's a little bit more specific. I think it's all based on the soul and the culture of the company and the type of work that the company does. We have people in our company, 140,000 of them around the world. About 40,000 of them answer phones. And we need somebody to answer phones 24 hours a day. So if people don't like to answer the phones between 8 and 10, we can't tell the customers that nobody wanted to work between 8 and 10. So I think that we have manufacturing lines that run, our toner plants that run 24 hours a day, same. So we have flexibility in the realms of reality, right? As much as possible. As much as possible. I mean, we have very little, except for you have to be there at 8 to 10 to answer the phone. But if you can negotiate with somebody to do it at a different time, or you want to do it at a different time, well, lots of flexibility. So I think it's required, but it's also not as independently realistic as these studies talk about. It's just not possible to do. We do things because people pay us to do it. Generally, they don't want to do it themselves or can't. And when they call us, we have to be able to answer them. So I have to knit together a work schedule for everybody, women and men, that responds to those customers' needs. If you have, women or men, a problem that limits you from working in a specific time, we have no issue. If we can work it out, we have no issue. But we don't have an environment that allows people to say that all of the women have to be gone from 4 to 8 to nurse their babies. It just isn't going to happen. This doesn't happen. So I think that flexibility is important, but we also have to understand that what we're doing is working. We're not playing, but what I mean by working, somebody is paying us to do it. It's not, so we have to be there. We are pretty benevolent, but also I really don't, this is part of the bluntness that's going to get me in trouble. I really worry about this idea that, people just don't want to work the midnight shift. Really? Really? I mean, somebody has to work the midnight shift, and sometimes it may have to be a woman who has to do that because that's who we need to do it. So I think that there's pros and cons. I think there's pros and cons. As you move up, the more flexibility you get. And if you're in certain types of jobs, there's certain types of jobs, if you're answering the phone, you're going to have to do it. But as you move up, we don't have, in my corporate headquarters, I couldn't tell you on any given day who's going to be where. We actually have a sheet now that, types out through the week, in the office, out of the office, because who the heck knows where they're going to be? Just as long as I can reach them. So there's certain jobs that allow you to do that independent of gender, and there's certain jobs that are harder. It's harder. Yes.
So looking back into your career, Xerox, career and personal milestones that you've hit, has there been something, a central theme that has kind of driven you from one milestone to the next? What kept that desire going forward?
Yeah, this is this idea of this missionary thing, really. In the beginning of my career, I just came to work every day and had a great job. And by the way, amazingly and interestingly, they kept giving me different jobs. And I didn't do a lot of shopping. I didn't even know really what to shop for. So they do this, how about doing that, how about doing that, how about doing that? So in the beginning, flexibility was important for me, but I had it because it was not considered flexibility, just given opportunities. After a while, though, I had a relationship. I developed a relationship with the company. So when you say personal milestones, all the personal milestones are about making the place better. and sustainable over time. Because after, people talk about legacies, what's your legacy going to be? I have no clue. I mean, ran the place for 7 years, 9 years, whatever the heck it is, and I think I left it a little bit better with more options on the go forward. But after a while, it just became, I liked the place. And I just, as many options as I was given, I took. And then I started to look for options, like I wanted to work outside the United States. And I said, yeah, that'd be a good idea. So I kind of just talked to somebody, how do you do that? And these kinds of, things. So it was never this purposeful path of moving up. It was this purposeful path of contributing. There is a point, by the way, when I became senior vice president of whatever the heck the thing was, where when I realized that, I could probably become I'm in close enough proximity that I may be able to become the CEO. That took a long time. That took 25 years before I even thought about that. But so personal milestones for me was all this kind of sticking with it and doing. I think people have more purposeful careers now. I mean, I'm going to spend 2 years here, and then I'm going to go, do this, and I'm going to go to this other company and do that. For me, it was just doing more, kind of getting broader experience, and not experience because I needed experience. It was because I was bored of doing what I was doing, or a different option came along, et cetera. I made a choice really early, probably after 10 years, that I wasn't going to leave. That was clear, because and that was something that was purposeful, because you have to decide if you're going to. The amount of if you're going to leave, the amount if you have a propensity to leave, the amount of options that you have are generally high. So you got to make a purposeful decision that says I'm probably not going to do that. And so I made a decision to not do it and put my head down, and it ended up paying off. Not because I became CEO, but because for the last 12 years of my job, I had great, just like unbelievably impactful things to do. I mean, it was not about, well, I'm doing this so I can become the CEO. I mean, we were near bankrupt at one point. And they said to me, you got to save $2 billion. And I looked around and said, me? $2 billion? Yeah, you run manufacturing, you spend $5 billion. You got to save $2 billion. And it was really just energizing. It was a kind of a cool thing to do. So those are, I was always given this cool thing to do. I mean, some of the ramifications were bad, but the mental challenge was huge. The stress was huge. The impact was huge. So I kept getting these opportunities without having to leave the company. And I was like, this is not bad. It's not bad.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We have classes to go to. I want to take the opportunity to thank you from the school and personally from myself.